So thank you everyone for joining us for this fireside chat with Tom Rachelski. I'd like to introduce Maria Henkel, who's our founder and president of the CEO Forum. She's a recent graduate from Rutgers MBA and is a talented marketing expert. She's going to help field some of the questions from the audience. And so feel free, you can put your questions in the chat, and we'll also have a Q&A afterwards if you'd like to unmute yourself. Tom tapped into his home brewing passion and is now the founder and president of Ghost Hawk Brewing in Clifton, New Jersey. He earned his MBA in finance from Rutgers and also works in corporate wealth management. He is a U.S. Army veteran who also served in Kuwait for 12 months. And with that, Tom and Maria, I'd like you to take it away.
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for this installment of the CEO Forum Speaker Series. So let's get right to it, Tom. Tell us a little bit about your background and kind of, you know, are you a Jersey native? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I am born and raised in New Jersey, and actually our brewery, we opened up in Clifton, which is my hometown where I grew up. We're actually looking at a couple different places when we were planning on opening up a brewery. I originally wanted to open up in Piermont, New York, which is right there on the Hudson River. I thought, it'd be a nice area, not too far from New York City. Plus the liquor laws are very easygoing in New York State, New Jersey. The liquor laws are actually literally the same as they were after Prohibition ended. And if you ever seen the movie Boardwalk Empire, the guy played by Steve Buscemi, who was one of the gangsters, actually helped create the liquor laws that are still in effect to today. So I didn't really want to open up in New Jersey, but but then we decided if we're going to open up in New Jersey, let's open up in my hometown in Clifton. So open up right around the corner from where you grew up.
Oh, that's really cool. So, how did your military background inspire you to get an MBA and eventually move into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the one great thing about the military definitely taught you discipline. And it also taught you to be very goal focused. So, whatever job or career I was in, I was always thinking like, what's the next step from here? All right, I'm working at this bank or working at this firm. All right, what's my 1-year goal, my 3-year goal, my 5-year goal? And where do I want to be in 20 years? And I definitely felt like career-wise, if I want to go to that next level and get to that next step, an MBA would essentially be a very smart financial decision to get my career to the next level. So I'm very happy to get accepted to Rutgers University. And what was great about Rutgers too is I was working in Jersey City at the time, and they had a satellite campus in Jersey City. So that was actually one of the deciding factors that I ended up going to Rutgers for. So I did a lot of my as many electives as possible in Jersey City, and then finished up the rest of the courses in Newark.
Okay, great. So
to be just very focused and do what you need to do to finish the plan.
Yeah.
Charge up that hill if you got it, right?
Absolutely. So I'm sure getting your MBA, you were presented with a lot of different opportunities. When did you realize that you wanted to kind of dip your feet into the entrepreneurship? I know you've done different things, but when did entrepreneurship and brewing kind of become the thing that you wanted to go after?
I mean, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. My mother was an entrepreneur. She used to have like a cleaning business, and she used to hustle really hard. It was great. She would go around putting like flyers in people's mailboxes, and she would go take me along with her, and she'd like give me a stack of milk, a stack of flyers, and be like, all right, you go this way and make just four right turns, and I'm gonna make 4 left turns, and we'll meet on the other side of the block. All right, and I don't want to see any flyers in your hand when I see you on the other side. So I guess my mom kind of instilled an entrepreneurial spirit inside me. And a lot of the sales jobs I had were very entrepreneurial focused. I never really just worked with somebody in a desk like an accountant, just kind of grinding it out. All the jobs were, kind of building my own book of business. It gave me flexibility to kind of present myself in as somebody, yeah, I worked at Fidelity for a while, but I would tell my clients, you're investing with me, Tom Rachelski, not Fidelity Investments, right? I'm your point of contact, and I'm your person. So I think a lot of those steps in my life kind of got me closer and closer to actually creating my own business and being 100% entrepreneurial, not just kind of working under somebody else's flyer like when I was at Fidelity or UBS. I'm sorry.
So what does a typical day look like for you? Running a brewery and doing all the things that you're kind of working on now.
Yeah. I mean, you can't tell too much in the thing, but I have a lot of gray hairs because I have 3 kids. So it's definitely challenging being a small business owner with a family, with sports and activities and things like that. But again, that military discipline teaches you time management. But yeah, the typical day is first thing I get up and I go through my emails in the morning because there's always tons of emails from customers and vendors and things of that nature, and then getting the kids to school, and then getting back to the emails and just getting the orders out. So I handle all the finance, all the sales and marketing, business development for the brewery. So there's constantly meetings, things like that I need to take, and just making sure I'm really busy too. If I'm not busy, then that's a problem. Right. So if I ever realize I'm sitting home not doing anything, I'm like, all right, well, let me find new customers. Let me figure out a way to network and expand the business. And one recent idea I came up with was reaching out to the Meadowlands, and connecting with them. And after playing some phone tag, I was able to connect with somebody at the Meadowlands. And now Ghost Hawk is going to be the official beer of the Hambletonian, which is the biggest in New Jersey. So we're actually doing a special beer just for them for that weekend. It's going to be a golden ale for the Golden Crown.
Nice.
And have a really cool theme, but of course that's a cool deal to land. But now there's all the logistics of getting them 15 barrels of beer, right? How am I going to beer that much beer? I'm used to doing like a couple kegs at a time.
Right.
So now it's always so that now kind of leads to another thing. So I'm basically very busy, and then I got to get all wrapped up by 1 o'clock. I got to pick up the kids and get them ready for softball.
Yeah, it's a lot of work being a parent and also running your own business. I can definitely relate to that.
I definitely recommend to get your MBA before you have kids, because actually when I started my MBA, I think I had just 1 kid at the time. She was still an infant. Luckily, I got it all wrapped up before the second came along. So I don't know, I couldn't do it right now. Open up a business and go for an MBA with 3 kids. Right.
Something's got to give, I guess.
Yeah, my sanity.
So the theme to our talk is how to run a successful brewery. And I guess we can start wherever you'd like, but maybe some high level advice that you'd give to students that are aspiring either to begin a brewery or just, start a business in like the alcohol or beverage industry.
Yeah, I mean,
like things that maybe you didn't know when you started or things like that.
Absolutely. So the one huge piece of advice I'd give to anybody that wants to start a business or become an entrepreneur is definitely be on social media. If you don't have LinkedIn, if you don't have Facebook, you don't have Instagram, open up an account today for that stuff. Because if I didn't have Facebook, I would never even open up a brewery. Kind of interesting story how we opened up the brewery is my best friend in high school, his older brother's name is Steve. And Steve posted on Facebook something, it was like 3 years ago, that, hey, listen, I own a brand management company. I do graphic design. I'm really good with marketing and design. So I'm like, essentially a left brain person, right? And anybody out there that wants to open up a business and is a right brain person, reach out to me. And essentially that's how kind of Steve and I didn't really talk for 20 years. We were Facebook friends. He mentioned that, and so I reached out to him. I actually took him up on his offer. I was like, listen, to my wife's chagrin, I actually had money saved up for a new house. So I was like, I have all this money saved up, so I want to, maybe I'll do something right now, and then, push down buying a new house a couple years. Now it's going to be a couple more years, so and that's how we connected on social media. And if you're not on Facebook, you're missing out on opportunities. And then also, once we open up the brewery, that's essentially our lifeline to getting our brewery and news about our events and our new beers is almost entirely through social media. I mean, long gone are those days where you hand out flyers and things like that, because it's gone. And you could do billboards, I guess, but that's the best thing is you just spend a couple bucks on Facebook to boost your posts, and then people see your information whether they like it or not.
Yeah, you can see some incredible amount of growth through social media marketing nowadays. It's kind of amazing.
Absolutely. So I would say the number one tip for aspiring entrepreneurs is just make sure you're on social media and make sure you're networking constantly.
Yeah, networking is very important. So another thing that I think a lot of people will be interested to hear, if there's any surprises or things that maybe you ran into in this whole like opening a brewery process that maybe you weren't anticipating, or
yeah. I mean, I would say even opening up any type of business, always essentially double the time that you think you're going to open. So whatever time you think of, add another 6 to 12 months. And whatever budget you have for opening up your business, double. Because there's always going to be, there's things but then there's things you don't know that you don't know that are going to pop up while you're opening up. So of course we came up a lot of it. It was funny, actually. I saw the other day, I saw a flyer saying that we were hoping to, Ghost Hop coming fall of 2018, and we ended up opening up April 2019.
Oh my gosh!
Almost exactly 6 months later.
Yeah. So I'm sure you weren't anticipating that originally when you did all that promo to begin with.
Yeah, but that's where your MBA experience comes in. Because when I was opening up the brewery, I put together a very, very detailed business plan that I got a lot of experience from my Rutgers education. And that business plan is essentially your Bible to getting open. And also your first 6 months should be all in the business plan. And actually, you should even have your first 5 years kind of mapped out in your business plan. So we knew what our budget was, we knew what our safety net was. And so when we went over that, we knew, all right, we're over. So we have this type of gap. How are we going to fill in that gap? And even if we don't fill in that gap, where can we then make sacrifices in other areas? We were very fortunate that we were unfortunate that PSC, during my research of developing the business plan, all the research I'd done, PSC&G was supposed to pay for our electrical upgrade. And they did some sort of assessment, and they said it won't be profitable for them. So they actually passed the bill down to us. So it was $20,000 bill I was not expecting.
Wow.
But luckily we had a cushion, and then we had to kind of figure out, all right, well, now our cushion's gone, how are we going to fill in, and how are we going to make sure we open up on time? So we were very fortunate. We did a crowdfunding. And about social media, the only way you can get a good crowdfunding is if you are very active on social media and get your word out there. And we were very fortunate that we were able to raise exactly how much money we needed to open up to fill in that gap, because we raised exactly $20,000 after fees, and our bill from PSC&G was also for $20,000.
Oh, that's very interesting. So did you go through like a specific crowdfunding app that you would recommend, or did you just promote we did, your own business?
Yeah, we did GoFundMe, because Kickstarter has like a lot of weird rules. So we ended up doing a GoFundMe project, and we were very fortunate to get that. So and again, that was all through the business plan, and we had it mapped out, and then we also knew how much we need to make on day one in order to get the business afloat, and luckily we were able to hit those targets. But again, if you don't do the research, you don't put in the work ahead of time, you don't have a business plan, you don't want to go in blind into whatever project you're going to.
Yeah.
If I may,
Go ahead,
Maria,
Ryan.
I had a
Go ahead.
question about some of the research you did during the business plan. So, of course, liquor laws are very complicated. And so I'm curious if you did a lot of your own research when you're developing the business plan, or did you engage an attorney that specialized in liquor laws to help develop that business plan, and or when did you start engaging an attorney?
Yeah, I mean, well, one way I engage is just going to breweries and just seeing the way their setups are, trying to talk to the brewmasters, try to talk to the owners. I was checking in every time I went to a brewery, and I didn't tell anybody I was opening a brewery. So people were like, "What the hell is wrong with you, Tom? You've been to like 5 breweries this week. Do you have a problem?" Go home to your wife. I didn't want to tell people, "Hey, I'm opening up a brewery yet." But luckily the Brewers Association in New Jersey is very close. Everybody is very helpful and looking to help other breweries because every brewery in New Jersey has the same major competitor, and that's of course the biggest brewery in New Jersey, which is Budweiser in Newark. So, but yeah, so all these guys were very helpful, and again, I was mentioning earlier, networking. I went into these breweries and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm thinking about opening a brewery. I'm putting together a business plan. What kind of advice do you have? What can you tell me are some things I need to look out for?" And creating mentorship with a lot of these existing breweries.
Well, that's great to be unified by a common enemy, so to speak. When you're but that's also great too, that it's just a matter of getting your boots on the ground, getting into the environment, talking with people to do that research, not just Googling it, but speaking to people who are running the business.
Yeah, exactly. So I got a lot of advice from them, and honestly, the ABC, people like to complain about the ABC, but they were also very helpful. Anytime I have a question, I give them a call, and they were also very helpful with answering questions. I didn't really use any attorneys at all because they charge by the minute, so that could be a very expensive part of opening up a business and being an entrepreneur. And actually, I just used LegalZoom to set up everything. Set up the LLC and set up all the registration documents, and that's a great thing about services like that.
Outstanding.
So how long has your brewery been around then? And 2019 is the official start date?
Yeah, so we've been, April was our 2-year anniversary.
Okay.
Fortunately, COVID was still a little bit high at that point, so we weren't able to have a full celebration. But we hope to have a 2.5-year anniversary later this fall.
That's great. And how has things evolved as far as like how many brews you offer, or how you kind of decide what to brew next?
Yeah, I mean, as opening up a business during COVID, or being open during COVID, presents a lot of challenges, of course. But you have to be flexible and be able to pivot if need be. So our brewery is very focused on the taproom sales and draft, in other words, B2B sales to other bars and restaurants. And of course, when restaurants were closed for several months last summer, and essentially our tap room was also closed, we had to kind of essentially pivot and figure out, all right, well, what are other ways that we can make revenue and expand our business? And then we decided to focus on can sales and home delivery also. So we essentially had our driver, instead of lugging kegs around, we set up our website to accept home delivery orders. And then we just stopped kegging up beer and focused on almost putting it all into cans so we can sell to liquor stores, which were doing very well last year. Probably had record sales, and then do direct to consumer delivery. And now we're actually kind of pivoting back now that taproom sales are open, now that bars and restaurants are open, and also now that liquor store shelves are almost inundated, because a lot of other breweries end up doing that too. So now when you go to a liquor store, it's not just like Dogfish and Sam Adams and your macro beers. You have a wide array of craft beers, but of course that creates additional competition for us, to fight for that shelf space.
Yeah, so if you're kind of in between fighting for shelf space and going for restaurants, how do you determine what's that perfect mix of how many kegs you're delivering versus how many cans you're making?
Oh my God! If you ask my brewmaster, we still haven't figured that out, because he's always yelling at me for overselling. But yeah, that unfortunately that equation's constantly changing. You know, it was funny, like last Monday, I was like kind of disappointed with the keg sales. I was like, all right, well, let's can up this last batch. And then it was crazy that Tuesday and Wednesday, we got like dozens of keg orders. So we're like, oh man, he was just grumbling and mad at me for for doing that. But yeah, it's just, that's why when you have any type of business, not just a brewery or whatever business you decide to open, you have to be flexible and make sure that you're constantly keeping your doors open for new opportunities, or if you make a mistake that it doesn't cost you too much financially in the long run.
I find your comments about fighting for shelf space really interesting, because of course it applies to almost any kind of company that's serving to sell products to the consumer. Can you give any advice about how do you negotiate for as much shelf space as possible for your product? How do you convince those retailers to take your product and put it out there?
Yeah, it actually comes from my sales experience, and again, when it comes to networking, I feel like one reason I'm able to get more shelf space, one reason, of course, is my beer tastes better, but but another reason is that I'm developing my relationship with my vendors and customers. So I don't look at, oh, I'm at Bottle King, and let me just email Bottle King my orders for the week or my beer offering for the week. I'm actually reaching out to them, talking to them, and I know a little bit about every one of my salespeople or my point of contacts at all my bars and restaurants. I make it a very specific request to my wife that, like, hey, let's go to visit my customers too, so I can also see them face to face. Yeah, it's one thing to send an email saying, all right, cool, we'll have our beer, but cool, I'm actually going to be at your restaurant this weekend. I'm going to tag a picture of my beer at your restaurant, talking to the bar staff, educating them on my beer, telling them the story about the brewery. So it's not only just the beer orderer likes my beer, my brand, but also the bartenders are cool. Yeah, I remember this guy. Yeah, this is Ghost Talk. They're a local brewery. I met the owner last week. He came by here with his kids, and they were jumping around the tables, but he's a really nice guy. You should try their beer.
Sounds good. And do you give free samples maybe to the owners or the bartenders too, just for them to try it? Or
yeah, of course, yeah. Some t-shirts or stickers or whatever. But it's more about creating that human relationship and letting them know. And all right, cool, I met the owner of this brewery. He's a really nice guy. You should try their beer. And giving them samples is one thing, but it's getting the bartenders to be your promoter, being your influencer, and getting them to give people samples, being like, hey, you've never had a Ghost Hawk, let me give you a sample. And when they try it, they're like, wow, this is delicious beer. And that's really how you develop your brand, build customer loyalty.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so a little more on, I guess, brand building and customer loyalty. What are your future aspirations for kind of doing that with the brewery? And do you have anything on the radar that you'd like to share with us as far as upcoming events or things you'd like to promote?
Yeah, I'd love to clone myself so I can kind of split up the work. But we're not quite there yet. Yeah, it's more about kind of getting exclusive deals, so you don't have to fight for that, for that shelf space. If you have, a bar that's has a dedicated tap line to your beer, and that could be, with any business, whether you have a cleaning service, focusing on how to get your customers to be 100% loyal to you, because you don't want them to focus. It's more about focusing on value, not price. Because anybody can always come in and say, oh, Ghost Hawk is selling you kegs for 200. I'll sell you a keg for 190, right? What you want is that bartender to say, oh, that's nice. It's I'm saving money, but you know what? I kind of like the way Ghost Hawk does business. I like the way the owner has a very hands-on touch and comes here and answers questions anytime. If there's ever a problem with the beer or keg or anything, I always have a no questions policy, right? If you're not happy, I'll take the keg back and I'll replace it. No problem. I'll figure out what to do with it. I have a kegerator in my basement. So if you're not happy with the keg, I'll just put it in my basement and I'll get you a fresh new keg, right? And so, and kind of selling on that value. then you never have to worry about losing the price. And then, like I said, having more exclusive deals, like working more with a partnership. So you're not really their customer, but you're also more their business partner. And for example, we have a couple great events coming up. We're going to be the official beer of the Passaic County Beer and Barbecue Festival. That's going to come up in July. I'll post it in the chat, the specific details. We're also going to be the exclusive beer of the Hambletonian race, which is going to be in August. We're doing a golden ale for the Golden Crown, and got a couple other big projects coming up.
Sounds exciting. We already have a question. I'm gonna unmute you, Shivani, so you can go ahead and ask Tom yourself, or maybe Ryan needs to do it since he's the moderator. There you go.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, Mr. Tom. How are you? Miss
Hey,
Maria, how are you? So I just had a question. Is your marketing focused more towards local businesses, or are you just trying to target businesses in New Jersey specifically, or are you looking to, obviously, like, because I know you said Budweiser was your considered main competitor, Newark company, and also what would you say is your how are you trying to execute the marketing in that sense?
Yeah, well, what I try to do is kind of develop a kind of like a toehold strategy. So in other words, I'll try to get, like, maybe one bar or liquor store to get my beer, and then what I'll do is I kind of expand around that. So for example, like I got my beer into one bar in Jersey City, and now I know I have to go there to drop off the kegs. But now my driver, I'll send him with a bunch of samples, and I'll tell him, like, all right, when you do this one delivery, go to these 5 different bars nearby and drop them off. And so that's how I got, much more business in Jersey City. So now my next target is Metuchen and Morristown. So I already have one bar in Morristown and one liquor store in Metuchen that has my beer. So now I'm going to start sending my bartender with additional samples. I'm going to start. And what I essentially, I kind of do almost, I try to do a multi-pronged approach too to getting those new customers. Whether it's something simple, like just going there, knocking on the door, being like, hey, I just want to grab dinner. Hey, it's the owner here. To sending Facebook messages, Instagram messages, emails. Eventually, somebody's going to check one of those messages and maybe pass me on to the right person, or they might get ignored. But there's definitely a saying: the squeaky wheel gets oiled first, right? So if you just kind of send one email and you never check up again, then yeah, you're probably going to fall through the cracks. But if you send an email, then check in later on with the second email, and then follow up with an Instagram message, then follow up with a knock on the door. Eventually, they're going to have to listen to what your story is, and as long as you have a good story to sell your business, and you're not just saying, hey, I'm here for beer, you sell beer, we should do business, and explaining to them how your brands can work together and be beneficial for everyone.
Oh, thank you very much.
Great question.
Yeah, great question. Anybody else?
Hi, Tom. My name is Elvira. I'm a co-president of Rutgers Forum. Thank you very much. It was such an amazing information. It was really interesting to learn what tactics you've been using to market your business. I know it can be tough. I was wondering, how do you maintain balance between work and life? I know it can be tough having young kids and running your own business. So what entrepreneurial tricks have you discovered to keep you focused and productive in your busy day-to-day schedule?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I don't know how people ran businesses 20 years ago, without mobile phones. So what we've moved everything almost to almost a cloud-based focus, right? So we have QuickBooks, and all my drivers and the other business owners, we all have QuickBooks. So we can see orders coming in. We can see what kind of sales we're expecting for the week. So I would say, having something where it's shared amongst the important people is step one. So everybody's on the same page. Number two is just being in constant communication with your other business partners. So that way, again, so everybody's on the same page. We even we have weekly meetings with all the owners, all the executive staff at the brewery, just so again we're all on the same page. We know what the expectations are next week. We know, all right, we're opening up the tap room, or what are the goals? What are some big projects that we're working on? But essentially, how to kind of manage that all into time in 24 hours. It's definitely tricky, but just kind of allocating time for yourself and allocating time for your family is important. So that's why I try to get as much done as I can in the mornings, because I know once my kids get home, that time is going to be very difficult. I'm also, unfortunately, have to kind of work later into the day too. So I am doing a lot of emails later on at night after the kids are finally asleep too. So it's like the mornings and the evenings are my productive time, whereas from 12 o'clock to 8 o'clock, it's essentially family time. So, both those times are very important, and you don't want to sacrifice any one of them for the other.
Right. Thank you very much.
Hi, Tom.
Yeah.
I had a question for you, actually, as well. So I feel like in brewing, there's some very specialized talent that you need to have. So when you were out looking for partners, and maybe you're a group of friends that decided that wanted to do it, but also too for employees, can you tell us a little bit about how did you approach finding the right talent for your company, both for partners and for employees?
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about networking earlier, and it was entirely done through networking. While I was researching opening up a brewery, Steve, my business partner, who's also an amazing networker, he said, I know these guys that own a distillery in Clifton. And we're like, all right, cool. Opening up a brewery is kind of like opening up a distillery. So I'm sure there's a lot of similarities. Let's go and meet these distillers. And now that was huge for us, because they actually ended up telling us two important things. So first off, they told us there's a unit opening up next door to them. So we're like, cool, let's move in there. So it was in Clifton, and we're kind of debating on a location. So great, it'd be really cool being right next to a distillery, a brewery and distillery right next to it. And we didn't have a brewmaster yet at that time. So we were like, do you know any brewmasters or anybody in the brewing industry? And they were like, funny you should say that, because when we were opening up our distillery, we knew this brewmaster. And we figured, let's talk to the brewmaster, because opening up a distillery is kind of like opening up a brewery. So they had the same thinking as we did. And they were like, yeah, let me connect you with Chris, our brewmaster. Because I did do some home brewing, but I wasn't going to literally bet my house on my brewing skills. So we were like, all right, let's meet with Chris, the brewmaster. And it turns out he was an industry veteran. He's been brewing for 28 years. He has 9 medals from the Great American Beer Festival. And luckily he was actually in between, brewing jobs. So he was actually looking to go somewhere new. So again, if we never spoke to the distillers, I might be home brewing in Piermont, New York, in a brewery that's going out of business, because my brewing skills aren't that good.
Sounds good. Thank you. And I see another question that came through the chat. If you'd like, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and question.
Hi, Tom. My name is Tiago, and I put my question in the chat. So this is the little scenario that I have. My former boss, she just created a new wine. So my question for you is, what are your suggestions for her at the very initial stage? She has her production down. She has the bottle, the labeling, everything looks beautiful. Now she's just looking for new customers. So I understood your strategy for smaller liquor stores. What are your strategies for bigger stores? Let's say ShopRite or chain liquor stores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just hit or miss, and just being persistent. And when you're an entrepreneur, you are a salesperson. whether you I know that word has like kind of like a negative connotation, but if you're not going to sell your business, who is? So sometimes it's surprisingly actually easy to get into a lot of these big places because you never know who the influencer is at these locations. And the only way you're going to find out is if you just knock on some doors. Don't be afraid. It says no solicitors. Just go in with a bottle of wine and say you want to buy a bottle of wine and just start a conversation. And sometimes you never know, the cashier might know who the buyer is, and the buyer might know who the approver is, and sometimes you might work your way up the chain, and that's how I got into Whole Foods. Just talking to one of the cashiers who connected somebody to another person, and then they connected me to somebody who was like a really big person. They lived in New York, and I actually drove all the way to New York to drop off samples because I didn't know when that person would be around. So if you were just kind of just sending an email, it might just get lost in the jumble. So just I would say just find out who your customers are and just keep asking, and eventually you'll find out who the purchaser is. And also, Thiago, another good thing is make sure you keep your network up to date. Just constantly check in with people too, because I've actually gotten into other places because I knew them from working at a different bar or restaurant or liquor store, because a lot of these people move around from job to job. So if you stay in touch with somebody, then you'll find out, oh, cool, you just got a job at a new bar or restaurant, right? Can I meet with the owner there? And there'll be more. That's how I got into Stateside. I knew the bartender at Big Heads in Hillsborough, and she ended up moving to Stateside, which is a brand new restaurant in Franklin, New Jersey, right by the Rutgers campus. And that was entirely through just staying in contact with your network.
So like
Awesome. Thanks for the great question, Thiago. We also have a question coming in from Steve. Steve, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask Tom.
Hey, Tom, Steve Rachelski here. We've spoken before in the past, I think pre-COVID, working on getting my craft brewery up and running here in New Jersey. And I'm running into a wall with identifying locations. Do you have any recommendations on finding open space that would work for a craft brewery? Did you work with any specific retailers, or, how did you guys end up finding the one that you're currently in?
Yeah, I do hear a lot of stories because I do talk to a lot of the new breweries and a lot of the breweries in planning who are part of the Brewers Association. So I know it is very tricky getting new places, and some towns are just not brewery friendly. I live in Lodi, New Jersey, and I know for a fact somebody tried to open up a brewery in Lodi a few years ago, and they told me a horror story dealing with the council, and so I actually didn't even bother looking at Lodi. But now, of course, the mayor of Lodi regrets that decision, wishes that I did talk to him. But yeah, it's definitely very tricky and getting variances. Ryan, you asked about hiring an attorney. The only time we ever hired an attorney was to get a variance to get our location zoned. But there are a lot of places that are very brewery friendly. I get emails all the time saying, "Hey, are you interested in opening up a brewery here?" So Steve, if you want, reach out to me, send me an email, because I do know some places that are more brewery friendly, and they're actually kind of soliciting brewers to come to their town, because it is it does create a tourist destination, right? That's what a lot of towns don't understand. Like Clifton, they were nice and let us open up. They were a little worried, like what kind of crowd is going to come to the brewery, and now they realize that they were a little wrong in that decision, because there are people come from all over the state to try out our brewery, and then when they're in Clifton, they're hungry and they go somewhere to eat and shop, and it also puts Clifton on the map too. So you have places like, I know Ryan lives in West Jersey, and there's gonna be a brewery open in Buttsville, New Jersey. We call Buttsville Brewing Company. So now people know about Buttsville. Otherwise before that I never heard of the town.
Let's hope their beer doesn't taste like their namesake.
Thanks for that, Tom.
All right. So yeah, so unfortunately that's just part of the planning process, putting together the business plan. And actually when I put together my business plan, I actually had a map showing where all the breweries in the state of New Jersey are. And on the map, I realized, hey, there's a big hole right in the middle in Clifton, New Jersey. So you have a bunch of Burke County. There were some in Warren, some in Central New Jersey, but there was literally a big hole right in the middle of northern New Jersey that didn't have a brewery. So I was like, all right. I mean, I met the distillers. They thought it was a good idea to open next door, and just looking at it from a competition perspective, I don't want to open up around the corner from an existing brewery. I want to go somewhere that's a little bit newer, and there's less competition.
Yeah, great question, Steve. So, and we also want to bring up, the synergy aspect, right? You're near a distillery, so you're not in direct competition, but at the same time, it's a little bit synergistic that you might have, similar ideas and be able to bounce ideas off of each other and things like that. So that might also be something you look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that could be with any type of business you open up, right? If you're opening up a print shop, you want to know what's the closest print shop. Is there a Minuteman press around the corner? You don't want to have to kind of worry directly competing against somebody. You want to kind of figure out where everyone else is. And there's a lot of great resources you can find. There's a company called Reference USA, and I'm sure Rutgers probably has a free account for them. Or if Rutgers doesn't have an account with Reference USA, your local library most likely has a free account with Reference USA, and you can actually search by business type by doing the NAIC code. And so I use that also to figure out where all the breweries are, but I also use that the other way to find out where all other bars and liquor stores are. And you can actually do it by zip code. So you can do all the Jersey City bars and figure out where they are. And actually Reference USA is really cool too. You can actually create a map and the routes too. So what I'm doing right now is going from Clifton to Metuchen, and I'm doing all the bars and restaurants on the way there. So I can actually create, if I can't get any more in Metuchen, at least I can have my driver do a couple stops on the way there. So I'll put that in the chat, Reference USA.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Tom. One more question coming in. Shivani, you want to?
Yep. Okay. So I have one more question. Is your focus more on online sales? Like, are you trying to increase customers going to your website and ordering the beers, or in store? And if it's in store, what would be some benefits of having a brick and mortar? Because I know expenses are higher. You have to pay for electricity and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, well, it also depends on honestly, it depends on your business model. So Maria, she lives in Monmouth County, and there's a brewery there called Twin Lights Brewing Company. But they actually don't have a physical location. They're what's called a gypsy brewery. So they go to other breweries that have excess capacity, that have empty vats, and they go to those breweries like, listen, if your vat is empty, why don't you rent it to us, and we'll make our beer at your place. So, and we'll pay you a rental fee, right? So it's a win-win for everybody. We get our beer made. We save a lot. They're saving a lot of money because they don't actually have to build a physical location. And the other brewery's happy because now they're getting a little extra revenue that they weren't expecting. So it depends on your business model, right? And again, it comes down to the business plan, right? So I'm sure Will, the owner of Twin Lights, knows what his rental budget is. He knows how much beer he needs to sell every week, and he's entirely focused on can sales, right? And he's doing a great job. He's in Whole Foods, and that's where actually I met Will from Twin Lights. But some breweries, like smaller nano breweries, like Eclipse is one I can think of. They're focused almost 100% on taproom sales. So so it depends on what your original business model was, and then you just got to stick to that business model. And if you can't, make sure you give yourself flexibility to pivot later on. So my answer is I would like to focus more on draft sales and taproom sales, but again, that answer is different for everybody, no matter what business they own.
Okay, thank you.
I have one final question as well, Tom. And we've had a couple different sessions that talked about funding. I'm kind of curious, what was your strategy for funding when you started this business?
Yeah. So I know that, yeah, that's great. You mentioned that, right? Because actually that was something I wanted to talk about earlier. If you really want to be an entrepreneur, you have to save money, right? Because sadly, it takes money to make money, and that's a sad truth. So you can't just be like, all right, today I'm going to open up a business, right? Even if it's something you're really good at, where are you going to? How are you going to pay your bills, right? How are you going to pay your rent for your business, right? Because you open up business, you have to have somewhere where a physical location, so you have to be able to pay those bills. So now your bills just double for the month. So even though I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, if I met Steve 10 years ago and he talked about, hey, let's open up a business, I wouldn't be able to do it, right? Because I didn't have the finances at the time. So if you're really serious about being an entrepreneur, you have to squirrel away some money, have to save some money. And because you don't want to take out, you want to borrow as little as possible. And luckily, I was very fortunate we were able to open up the brewery without any business loans, right? Because I do know a couple breweries that opened up with business loans, and those people were extremely stressed out last year, right? When their distribution sales essentially went to zero, right? My brewery, we were okay. We knew at least as long as we sell a couple beers during the week, I can pay my brewmaster, and I could pay the rent. That's the only really bills I needed to kind of focus on. So we were in a very, very strong position, which is why we were able to pivot to canning, even though it's less profitable. And actually we were able to even purchase a canning line, whereas, some businesses, if they were already over leveraged, they don't have the flexibility to pivot because they don't even have the cash on hand. And then, so the second is save money, save money, save money. If you have a job, don't just dive into your new business venture right away too, right? Because actually I was working with PNC Bank up to about a year ago. So during the first year of the brewery, I was still working at PNC Bank. So that kind of gave me flexibility personally and financially to be able to help build a brand, build a brewery, and still pay my personal bills. So the brewery didn't have extra bills because they didn't have a loan. And I had my job, and I was able to pay my personal bills. I'm sure PNC wasn't happy about it, but I joked around that it was very kind for PNC to give GoSock a free office in their bank during that first year. But whatever, it's a sacrifice you have to make if you want to be an entrepreneur, right? I had to, and if it means doing a little GoSock work on PNC's dime. It's a sacrifice I was happy to make because now I'm working full time for the brewery, and I'm living my dream of being an entrepreneur and being my own boss and having my own business. So that would be step number two. Make sure your business's expenses are as low as possible. Don't take any loans. Make sure your businesses, your personal expenses are paid for. So don't just jump right into whatever project you have. And then the third thing is going back to that business plan. That I learned to make from my Rutgers education, because I had such a solid business plan that had all these contingencies built into it, had all this information about competition, all this information about growth. I actually had no trouble finding additional investors to help out because I didn't have enough money by myself. But because I put together such a detailed business plan, I said, all right, well, I only need X amount of money. So whether I want to get one person to fill in that entire gap or three people split up three ways, I knew how much extra money I needed from the business plan. So that helped me figure out how much I need. Then plus when I presented my business plan to my potential investors, they were like, wow, you did a lot of work in here. This sounds almost like a no-brainer investment. So actually I had no problem getting those additional funds from the plan.
Great. Thank you. Such good advice from you, Tom. Thanks so much. One last thing, we like to do like favorite things. So we wanted to see, is there a book that inspired you, or maybe a podcast or something that you recommend to people attending today?
Yeah, I mean, I love Masters in Business with Barry Ritholtz. It's a great podcast from Bloomberg, and he's constantly interviewing entrepreneurs. So it's great to kind of learn about how other businesses kind of got off their feet. And he's interviewing very famous people that are, running multi-million-dollar businesses that started, in their garage. So it's a very inspirational podcast. a great book that I recently read about business is by Dan Ariely, which is called Predictably Irrational. So it talks a lot about behavioral economics and kind of like, hey, when you expect people to act a certain way, they don't act that way. And when you open up a business, it's a good way to kind of realize that, hey, all right, if you're expecting something to happen a certain way, it's not going to happen that way because people don't act the way they're supposed to. So I think it's a great book to pick up.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, we really appreciate you having here. We're kind of coming close up on an hour. Do we have any final questions? I see Flora's got something she wanted to add.
I was just saying it's not really business related, but I was just wondering, like, what would you say was your most popular beer, or like one that you would suggest?
From Ghost Hawk,
Yeah.
I would suggest to go with our stout. It's called Raven Dark. It's a delicious beer, and it's based on, my brewmaster will tell you it's better than a recipe that he made 2 years ago when he was at Gun Hill Brewery that won a gold medal at the Great American Beer Festival. So it's a dark beer, but it's nice. It's got a nice cocoa kind of coffee effervescence, and it's a delicious beer even if you don't like darker beers. But if you're not into darker beers, I'll recommend come by the brewery right now on draft only. We don't have it in cans or for sale outside the brewery. Would be our cherry wheat beer, and it's actually, I'll tell you the secret ingredient. The secret ingredient is French Montessori sour cherries. So it has like a nice little tartness to it. So it's almost like a hop, but it doesn't have that super bitter IPA taste if you don't like it.
Cool. I'll give it a try then. Thank you.
So your brewery is open currently?
Yes, we actually just opened I think a week or two ago for indoor sales. So before we were just completely doing outdoor sales and home delivery. We actually phased out our home delivery right now, so we don't do that.
Okay. Would you like to include your address in the chat so everybody can come and
Yes,
try some of your
absolutely.
tasty brews?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're on Ghost Talk. Right, so I'll include the address in the website right now. Great, guys. All right, cool. And then I also included information about 2 festivals that we're doing in the next month. And also next week in Jersey City, we're going to be the exclusive beer at Mana Contemporary, the Mural Festival, the Jersey City Mural Festival. So we're going to have a beer that we partnered with some local street artists to create the labels for. So if anybody's free next weekend, we're going to be in Jersey City.
Fantastic. Well, certainly thank you so
Awesome.
much, Tom.
Yeah,
well, great.
thank you very much.
for having us. Thank you for joining me today and listening to me. And I hope you guys follow your entrepreneurial dreams and open up that business and go do great things.
Yes, and if
Absolutely.
you'd like to join CEO Forum or see a recording of our chat, I'm going to include our YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn in the chat box, so you can follow us for future talks and also see the recording. Thank you so much, Tom. We had a great chat today, and best of luck with Ghost Hawk.
Great, thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Great, thanks.